Welcome everyone to another episode of Geoawesome Talk. It's an absolute pleasure to be here today. And my name is Muthu. I'm the co-host of this podcast together with my wonderful founder, Alex.
Thanks, Muthu. I'm super excited about this episode. Our guest today is Ariel Seidman, who is the CEO and co-founder of Hivemapper, a company behind Beamaps. Beamaps is a platform that's one of the most innovative advancements in the map-making process that we've seen in years. They leverage petabytes of data collected by a global community of users that are equipped with dashcam devices, and then they are extracting different map features using AI models. Ariel is also a serial innovator in the map-making process with over a decade of experience in scaling global map products for some of the leading companies in the field. Ariel, we are super excited to have you today. And without further ado, please introduce yourself.
Sure. Well, appreciate you guys having me. Yeah, we started Hivemapper in 2016. It had the same vision that it has today, which is how do you build this global map of the world? It turns out, though, that drones, at least in 2016, and I still think today, are not the right technology to scale a map at that level. So the crazy story of Hivemapper, which today is Beamaps, we rebranded part of it to Beamaps, but fundamentally it's the story of perseverance, right? Like staying true to like the vision and ensuring and working through the process of determining which technology sets you want to use to solve the problem that then fundamentally achieves the vision that we, in our case, build a new global map of the world. So yeah, we started off with drones, like I mentioned. Underneath the hood, we actually built this like very impressive piece of technology, or piece of software technology to be more precise. And so what happened was, it's like 2017, 2018, we had actually built up a fairly nice business, basically just selling that software to various large corporations and organizations. But at the same time, we were using the revenue that we were generating from that product, that just pure software product, to focus or refocus the company on street level mapping, right? So we tried iPhone devices, we tried Android devices, we tried other people's hardware, right? Other these dash cams and so forth. And nothing really stuck, to be really blunt about it, right? There was a couple of critical issues. One was the quality of maps from those sensors is always problematic, whether it be an iPhone, Android device, somebody else's third party. And the reason is, quite frankly, is just like they're not building their devices, their hardware device, to solve the mapping problem. That was issue number one. Issue number two was it wasn't passive for the contributor, right? Like think of an iPhone or Android device. Like even if you buy a secondhand Android device or iPhone device, and I know many people here in the community are probably familiar with things like Maplery, but fundamentally there's still effort, right? You have to, every time you get in the car, you have to open up the app and hit a button. Like just even that little amount of friction, what happens very quickly is the number of people who are contributing dies off very quickly, right? You just churn out all these users very, very rapidly. So that was, and that's true, iPhone devices, Android devices, other people's hardware. Fundamentally, very quickly, we realized that in order to scale a global map, right, it has to move beyond just the mapping geeks, right, who are going to be contributing, or some other person who's going to be contributing for some crazy reason, right, like that's super niche. It has to be able to like touch, 5 million people, 10 million people. And those people, are not going to be like us. They're not going to be like mapping geeks who are super excited about building a map. They just want something that works in the background and it's easy and all that. So this is like 2019. We committed to building our own hardware device. Okay. When we built our own hardware device, we said, okay, we want this thing to be passive, and we want it to be purpose built so it builds really, really high quality maps. What do I mean by high quality maps? That means is if it says, okay, here's a speed limit sign, 35 miles an hour, it can also correctly position that, right? Because if that speed limit sign or stop sign or whatever it is not then associated to the right drive path, then it's kind of a useless, right? And this is, really, really true in, many parts of Europe where the roads tend to be fairly narrow. And it's actually fairly challenging to ensure that, the specific sign that you have that dictates the rules on that specific drive path are in fact associated and tied to that specific drive path. And so fast forward to 2021, we got the core hardware product working combined with our software. And we tested it out actually in 3 different cities across the world: Lagos, Nigeria, Los Angeles, and Manila. And that was done for very specific reasons in terms of what we were trying to ensure that it works in like really, very, very, very dense cities like Manila, very big, wide, expansive cities like Los Angeles, and then Lagos, Nigeria has very, very hard, challenging roads. And so it worked. But now we need to scale it out, right? Is the short. And so we said to ourselves, okay, how are we going to scale this out? And we started to see really good examples, actually from the blockchain crypto world, where people were leveraging that technology to build out these large-scale networks. So there's one that's called Helium that we saw pretty early on. This is like 2021, once we had the hardware working. And what Helium was doing was building out a mobile wireless network, right? And so you had to like deploy all these hotspots all over the world in your house and your office and in a mall, whatever it is. And they built out this really amazing mobile wireless network. And so we adopted that technology, that technique, for purposes of building out a map, right? And so fast forward to 2022, we started to ship out the hardware all over the world. Fast forward to 2023, so a year later, we have mapped 10% of the global road network. And then fast forward to today, which is roughly 2 years on from 2022, we've mapped out 27 or 28% of the global road network. So that's how the story. I'll stop meandering and talking, but that's kind of the short version of how we got from 2016 and where we are today.
That's really impressive. And just to put it in perspective, because I was reading this up earlier, that's probably 3 times more than what Google Street View has captured in its entirety, what you've been able to capture in the last 2 years. So
yeah, they're big numbers. I don't remember the exact specific numbers. I think we were definitely growing like 5 times faster than Google Street View. And I think our new device, the B, which will start to ship in the next month or so, has tens of thousands of pre-orders on it. So once those start to ship out in big quantities, I think you're going to see those numbers go vertical.
So let's stick with B for a moment. So B Maps is your new initiative that you guys have started that's powered by the Hivemapper network. So walk us through it. What is B Maps? What is your vision behind it? What purpose does it have, and what problem is it aiming to solve? Because in a sense, you guys are revolutionizing the way we collect map data today.
Yeah. So look, what the problem that like Waze and Google Maps solved is effectively the problem of large scale motion data, right? And so Google Maps or Waze can tell you in real time, hey, people on this road segment usually go 30 miles an hour. Now they're going 10 miles an hour. So therefore there's quote unquote traffic, right? There's something has slowed down on that road. But they fundamentally, because they don't have cameras that are intelligent, at scale, they don't actually understand why. Why is it that now, and there could be 1,000,001 reasons, right? It could be like, the president of the United States is like driving by that area, so they close it down, right? It could be there's police activity. It could be there's a 3-car crash. It could be there's flooding. It could be there's road construction. It could be like 1,000,001 reasons, right? But if you have eyes and you have intelligence on the edge, you can understand it, right? You can very, very quickly be like, okay, that road is closed now because of road construction work. It's not a traffic accident or anything like that. That's going to go away in the next 30 minutes. It's fundamentally going to be there at least for, many, many hours, if not days. And so understanding what's actually going on in real time with the advent of these eyes is, quite frankly, nobody has that today, right? Some people will be like, well, Tesla has that. I was like, well, even Tesla does not have that at a global scale. They have that surely in parts of San Francisco. They have that in parts of LA. But I mean, you go to Georgia or you go to Oklahoma, or you go to the Philippines, I can assure you they have very little, if anything, right? And so the challenge of doing this on a global scale, of having these eyes that understand what's going on, gives you, quite frankly, a new kind of map. There, in addition to all this stuff that we've already, we want better, faster, cheaper, better understanding of what's going on. And I'll give you some examples of that. There's new types of things that you can do, right? So let me give you a quick example. So customer came to us and said, hey, they're like in the outdoor advertising space. And they're trying to track, like, okay, on 101 South, how many of the different billboards there have changed in the last month, right? Or like another company, they want to say, okay, how many of the billboards in LA and San Diego and San Francisco have ads for Apple products on them, right? So they're trying to understand impressions and advertising budgets and all that kind of stuff. And we can do that because, again, we have eyes that are real time, that are seeing the world consistently. So we can start to do that, right? Another customer came and said, look, I got all my truckers going between San Francisco and San Francisco Bay Area to, like, I think it was Salt Lake City or Denver. And so the toll roads are dynamic, right? The toll prices are dynamic, especially if you have an 18-wheeler. Sometimes they can be $20, $30, $50, whatever. And so he's like, if you give me real-time pricing of all the different toll roads, that's hugely valuable, right? Either I take, if it gets too high, I take another road. If it's like, no, like it's a low price, then I stay on that road. He's like, that kind of information, can save me a couple $100 either way, hugely valuable. And so again, this all comes back to, like, if you have eyes, you can actually see the world. And if you can see the world, there's just a lot more information that the existing maps simply don't have today.
So I'm interested to learn, how does it actually work? Right? Because you made it sound really easy, right?
Yeah.
But there is terabytes of data that you must be processing, analyzing to extract this knowledge that you've mentioned, right? So how do you do that at such a big scale?
Yeah. Okay, so first of all, the important thing is that 99.9% of the actual pipeline to extract out the relevant bits of information happens on the device, okay? And so what that means is that, that's a billboard ad, that's a speed limit sign, that's road construction, there's no left-hand turn. All of that data is being produced on the B device through this Map AI piece of software technology that we've built over now many years, right? Or it can say, like, look, that speed limit sign is unchanged, right? Or that other, road construction project is still there and I saw it yesterday. And so, like, no change, or, just confirmation that it's still there, right? So it operates in, like, slightly different modes depending upon whether it's looking for new things or it's looking to confirm things that it already knows about. So that's all happening. That's very, very, very important from a cost perspective. Like, if you were to upload all the imagery, like we did in the earlier days, and then process that on AWS, that gets crazy expensive really, really quickly, right? So, and the other part of it is that you only uploading the, relatively small amount of data. And that's usually important, right? If you're trying to upload massive amounts of imagery, it breaks down pretty quickly. Okay, so that forms the basis of the map. It goes through this Map AI trainer platform, which is effectively human beings that are doing quality assurance on all the map data that's being generated. And then what we do is, there's a couple different data products we have. You can just buy, like, the raw data sets. Okay, so that would be like all the object detections for, various speed limit signs, road construction, whatever. So some customers do that, like large, technically sophisticated customers just buy the direct data. Now we have a new product called Almanac, that is going to be released in the next probably month or two. And basically, you can think of this as, looks like a map, smells like a map, but you can ask it questions. So kind of going back to the example I gave before was like, okay, how many billboards have changed on 101 South, right, in the last month? That's a question you can ask it, and then you get the answer, which is, the locations of all the different billboards and what's changed, this month versus that month. So that looks, much more like a a normal user interface, but designed specifically to answer specific questions, right? Or the question of like, hey, I'm going from here to here, like, what's the price? That again would be answered by Almanac. So there are some customers that are, on that product today. It's not publicly released, but they're utilizing a version of that, and kind of testing it and making sure that it doesn't, give back silly answers or whatever it is. So that's the other product that we have. The third product that we have is a little bit more focused on commercial fleets. So basically they buy the B device and then they say, okay, I have like 30 vehicles, right? This one guy does like delivery of medical goods across the Netherlands and parts of Belgium as well. And so he wants to be able to, track his different vehicles utilizing the B device. He gets reports about like, hey, this driver drive like an idiot or whatever it is, right? So he's like actually getting value out of the B device in addition to it being mapping. And then he will also be provided, or she will be provided with, route intelligence, right? Because most of those commercial companies, the commercial fleet companies, their cars are on the road, right? And so they're basically trying to figure out like, where do I go? What's problems? What are the issues? What's the best route? Like, hey, if I like predict the best route for me tomorrow, right? That kind of stuff as well that we'll start to do. So those are tools that will get packaged into the Beekeeper product, which is designed for commercial fleets, logistic companies, transportation companies, those type of people.
That's kind of interesting, the different use cases that you spoke about and how you provide value to your customers. And in terms of the contributors, is it usually still a large percent of people who used to be using Mapillary kind of services, or has it become more the professional community that's also now trying to, make additional money in addition to driving the trucks?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think there's like three kinds of people. There's like the, hey, I'm interested in the crypto aspect of it. Like that's definitely a part of the community for sure. And I think the mapping is interesting, but that's not the reason that I like initially heard about it. Like, for example, I just met this couple. They live in the Lake Tahoe area here in California. And, sometimes they were telling me they go out on like a dinner date or whatever it is. And they'll sometimes take separate cars because they each have a device in their own car and they want to like, see and compete with one another, right? So even though that you have people who kind of maybe came to us for the crypto stuff, they're just kind of like, it's entertainment, it's fun for them, right? And it's easy, so it's kind of like it adds like a game element in a way. And then you definitely have like the commercial fleets that are like more into it from a, how can this be a productivity tool, right? Protect my assets, help me save money on insurance type of stuff. So that's the third category for sure.
I think that within our geospatial community, you will have a lot of geo geeks who will actually take a pleasure in mapping things. So, I certainly do it myself. So now talking about the geospatial community. So how do I access this data as a geospatial professional, right? From the perspective of a product. So what do I get? How do I actually observe this change? Is it served on the map? Is it served as some sort of a vector layer? How does it work?
Okay, so today there's API products. So there's API products for images. So you can pull the images via API into your own products, into your own tools. That's all the street level imagery. There's also an API for map features. So this is things like speed limit signs, traffic lights, stop signs, turn restrictions, all that kind of stuff. And you can then pull all that data into your own geospatial system. Then there's a user interface for kind of exploring all of the imagery, right? So if you don't want to use the API, you just kind of want to explore, you can do that through this tool called Scout. And then Almanac is really the tool that's going to bring intelligence, right? So you'll be able to ask the map questions and kind of get back very specific answers to those questions that combines, data as well as other data that's inside of the imagery, right? So you could ask it, this is maybe for the geospatial geeks, right? You're like, hey, are there any, speed limits, next to schools that are more than 25 miles per hour, right? Like that's a very, I don't know, easy, but that's a query that we could satisfy, right? Hey, is there any road construction happening near a Starbucks location, right? That's another thing you can do, right? So what is it doing? It's pulling together our understanding of the world. So we have, incredibly fresh, dynamic data about road construction that's happening, combined with, fairly basic POI data of Starbucks locations, right? But then it's attaching those two and saying, okay, like I understand the relationship between the two, and I can understand just like a normal human query. And then it returns also the data in kind of an organized way, which says like, okay, here's all the different Starbucks locations, and then here's where the construction is.
So in a sense, it kind of sounds like this long-term dream a lot of our community members have had. It's like combining the benefits of ChatGPT and large language models, and building on top of a huge spatial database.
Yeah, I mean, it's starting to come together. It's well, a couple things on that. Yes, I think it's very early days, and I think you have to be very smart about how you sequence it, right? Because if you just put a search box in front of people and with exactly like what you described, then people will ask, an endless number of questions, and you will only be able to satisfy a small set of those in the early days for a lot of good reasons, right? Like we may not have coverage in that specific location. It's a super, super complicated query. So what we're trying to be is thoughtful about this and say, okay, we're going to do this initially in 3 or 4 regions. We're going to be really, really good at this. And we're going to focus it on specific types of queries, right? We're not going to try to answer every single possible question. And we're not going to even set the expectation that we're trying to do that, right? Because then I think we'll have a higher success rate, and then we'll build off of that. Versus I think if you just put a search box in front of somebody, the vast majority of queries, like you won't be able to answer, and then they're just going to leave. They'll be like, oh, this is dumb. This is stupid. So yeah, we're working towards that goal that you described, but we're going to do it in pieces.
So Ariel, last question, but very important one. So what's next? Right, you said that you are at the beginning of this journey. Yeah. So what do we expect next as the geospatial community, and as users of Hivemapper and Bmaps?
Yeah. So this next device is really important for us. It does a lot. It's a much more capable device. There's tens of thousands of pre-orders and more. There's amazing uptake that we're seeing in terms of these commercial fleets. The reason I mention that is because sometime next year, I don't know exactly when quite yet, but we're focused on building a consumer navigation product that we think is fundamentally different, right? There has not, in my view, there has not been a ton of innovation in this space. I think Apple's recently has done some interesting things. Obviously, like Google Maps and Waze was the last really large scale innovation. But again, this was all motion data. And so as we start to build up incredible levels of density in specific regions, then it creates a really interesting opportunity is that we can now, it creates the data set and the opportunity for us to build a really competitively differentiated consumer navigation product. And I want to be cautious about that. And the reason I want to add caution to that is it's going to be focused on very specific regions to begin with, right? And we really want it to feel like something different than what you've come to expect by using Google Maps or Waze or some of these other products. And I think we have the data set to do that now, right? Like there hasn't been a lack of innovation in the consumer navigation space because of UI things or whatever it is because you don't have a new large scale data source. And once you have a new large scale data source that's intelligent, that is visual and spatially oriented, then that does open up an opportunity. Now, that doesn't mean the game is over just because we have this data set and we have this, camera that's intelligent and aware of all the understandings, whatever it is. We now have to translate that into like a truly differentiated consumer navigation experience. But yeah, that's the big next thing that I'm definitely focused on.
That sounds really interesting, and I hope by the fact that we're talking to each other, you're going to make sure that it's going to be available in Berlin and Warsaw.
Yeah.
That we get early access to it. Thanks a lot for taking the time for walking us through your journey at Hivemapper, your new launch with Bmaps and what it actually means. We've had a ton of things that we didn't get to discuss, but we are going to be publishing an article as well. So people who want to have more details can go check that out as well, and we will make sure to link it in the description.